My youngest son is a brilliant cook, but he refuses to share his food with his older brothers. When they finally got fed up and stole his dessert, he came crying to me, demanding I punish them. So I did the only thing that seemed fair. I grounded him and banned him from the kitchen entirely, telling him if he can't cook for everyone, he can't cook at all. I thought I was teaching him a lesson about family, but the internet had a very different opinion. My name is Susan. I'm 46 years old, and my house, once a sanctuary of relative peace, has recently become a silent battlefield. The war is being fought over simmering pots and sizzling pans, and the primary combatants are my three sons. I have 19-year-old twins, Matt and Chris, and their 16-year-old younger brother, Alex. All three of them still live at home, a situation that has its own unique set of challenges. The twins are navigating that strange limbo between adolescence and true adulthood. They're enrolled in community college and work part-time jobs, contributing what they can to the household expenses. Alex is a junior in high school, consumed by homework, friends, and his one true, all-encompassing passion: cooking. And when I say cooking, I don't mean the typical teenage fare of boiling ramen noodles or nuking a frozen pizza in the microwave. My youngest son is a genuine artist in the kitchen. He finds a deep, profound joy in the craft. He pores over cookbooks, watches culinary shows with the intensity of a surgeon studying a new procedure, and spends hours perfecting techniques that I, at my age, have never bothered to learn. He's talented, truly, exceptionally so. The dishes he creates are not just food, they are experiences. People who taste his cooking, from his grandparents to our next-door neighbors, are always effusive with their compliments, and you can see a light turn on in his eyes when they do. He takes an immense, quiet pride in his work. The problem, the deep and persistent crack in our family's foundation, is that he only ever cooks for himself. Whenever Alex enters the kitchen, it becomes his private studio. He moves with a focused grace, pulling ingredients from the pantry and refrigerator, measuring, chopping, and sautéing with an almost religious devotion. But the result is always the same: a single, perfectly plated portion of food, just for him. My twins have made it abundantly clear that they find this behavior deeply and profoundly rude. The kitchen is a shared space, the heart of our home. When the rich, savory aromas of Alex's cooking fill the house, garlic and herbs, roasting chicken, a complex bolognese simmering on the stove, it's a siren call. Matt and Chris will wander in, their mouths watering, and ask for a small plate. The response is almost always a tense negotiation. More often than not, Alex will flatly say no, his back turned to them as he meticulously arranges his meal. On the rare occasions he reluctantly agrees, he doles out portions so laughably small, so noticeably meager compared to his own heaping plate, that it feels more like an insult than a kindness. Every single time, it creates a palpable, simmering tension that sours the very air we breathe. From the twins' perspective, their brother's behavior feels calculatedly selfish. They are the older siblings. They both contribute to the household, not just with rent, but by often spending their own hard-earned money from their part-time jobs to buy food for everyone. A stack of pizzas on a Friday night, a collection of Chinese takeout containers, even just a simple run to McDonald's for fries and drinks for the family. They do this without a second thought. Sharing is, to them, an unspoken rule of cohabitation, a fundamental tenet of being part of a family. But their younger brother never, ever reciprocates this generosity. This conflict has been simmering for years, a low-grade fever that occasionally spikes into a full-blown argument. The twins often resort to joking about it, a defense mechanism to mask their genuine annoyance. But I've overheard their private conversations, the ones they have when they think I'm not listening. They call him stingy. They say he acts like he's living alone in a five-star hotel, with the rest of us as mere background characters. Alex, in turn, becomes a fortress of defensiveness whenever the topic is broached. His shoulders tense, his jaw sets, and he mutters retorts under his breath. "Learn to cook for yourselves" is a common one. Or the more pointed, "I'm not your personal maid." This behavior didn't manifest overnight. It has roots that stretch back to his early teens. When he was around 13 or 14, he started with baking. After school, he would make these incredible cookies and brownies, the kind that made the whole house smell like a professional bakery. At first, he would share, leaving the cooling racks on the counter for everyone to enjoy. But I started to notice a pattern. If his brothers ate what he considered to be too many, Or if they didn't save any for him to have the next day, he would become deeply upset, his face clouding over with a sense of injustice. I remember one specific incident vividly. He had spent an entire afternoon perfecting a chocolate chip cookie recipe, producing a tray of at least 24 golden brown, gooey-centered delights. The next morning, the plate was nearly empty. The twins, having a late-night study session, had devoured most of them. Alex found the depleted plate, and his face just crumpled. He cried, real tears of frustration and disappointment, and refused to bake anything for weeks. "What's the point?" he'd said to me, his voice thick with emotion. "I never get to enjoy any of my own food." Another time, he made a beautiful chicken Alfredo, the sauce creamy and rich, the pasta perfectly al dente. He served himself a large, generous portion. His brothers, drawn by the smell, asked for some. With a heavy, theatrical sigh, he gave them each a scoop that was maybe a quarter of the size of his own serving. They, of course, teased him about it, calling him greedy. It started as playful ribbing but quickly escalated into a full-blown argument at the dinner table. That was the first time I heard him snap, his voice sharp and angry. "If you want more food, then you can make it yourself." I'll admit, my husband and I have often brushed these incidents off as typical sibling bickering, the kind of squabbles that are part and parcel of raising 3 boys under one roof. But it's become more than that. It's a persistent, damaging pattern. The twins feel slighted and disrespected, their own acts of generosity thrown back in their faces. Alex feels like he's being taken advantage of, his passion twisted into an obligation. And I feel like I'm a permanent referee in a game where nobody ever wins. The tension flared up again a couple of months ago, setting the stage for the recent explosion. Matt, one of the twins, came home from his job at the hardware store with a huge bag from Chick-fil-A. He had used his own paycheck to buy a sandwich for each of us, a large box of nuggets for everyone to share, and a ridiculous assortment of sauce packets because, as he put it, he knows we all like variety. Alex happily ate his share, thanking his brother and not complaining for a second. But just a few days later, a familiar scene unfolded. Alex was in the kitchen, making homemade pizzas from scratch. The dough was hand-tossed, the sauce was his own recipe, the cheese was a carefully selected blend. The twins, their mouths watering, asked if he was making enough for them. He refused to give them more than a single, small slice each, barely larger than the palm of my hand. That was when I heard them muttering about him being selfish and two-faced, and I couldn't entirely disagree. Alex's defense is always the same, a mantra he repeats with the conviction of a true believer. Cooking is his hobby, he insists. It's his form of relaxation, his creative outlet. He's not cooking for the family, he's cooking for fun and for himself. He argues that if he is constantly required to scale up his recipes, to turn his personal passion project into a family meal, then it's no longer enjoyable. It becomes a chore. It becomes work. He claims, with some justification, that his brothers are perfectly capable of cooking for themselves, but they are, in his words, too lazy to even bother learning, so they just expect him to feed them gourmet meals on demand. From where I stand, however, it's not about laziness. It's about the fundamental principle of living together as a family. When you share a home, when you share a life, food isn't just an individual commodity. It's communal. It's a cornerstone of our shared existence. And it's not as if Alex is buying all these high-end ingredients with his own money. My husband and I buy the bulk of the groceries, and as I said, the twins often chip in as well. So, if he's using shared resources, why should the end result be for his exclusive enjoyment? Then there's the respect aspect, which is something I feel strongly about. The twins are older. I was raised with the belief that younger siblings should show a certain level of consideration for their elders. Part of that means not being selfish with the shared resources of the household. All of this simmering resentment, this long history of culinary conflict, finally boiled over last week in what will forever be known in our house as the banana pudding incident. It was a Thursday afternoon. Neither of the twins had classes that day, so they were lounging around the house, snacking intermittently but not really in the mood for any of the standard fare we had on hand. Alex came home from school, dropped his backpack by the door with a heavy thud, and immediately set to work in the kitchen. He was making banana pudding from scratch. The twins watched him, their interest piqued, as he mashed the bananas, prepared the custard, and carefully layered the Nilla wafers. "Hey," Chris asked, "can you make enough of that for us too?" Alex, without even turning around, delivered a flat, unequivocal no. He told them the ingredients were right there in the pantry if they wanted to make it themselves, but he was not making it for them. He then poured his perfectly prepared pudding into a large glass bowl, covered it with plastic wrap, and placed it in the refrigerator to chill. Then, he went upstairs to take a shower. When he came back down an hour later, eagerly anticipating his dessert, he found the bowl on the counter, completely empty. The twins had eaten the entire thing. The explosion was immediate and spectacular. Alex blew up. He screamed at them, his voice cracking with rage, calling them thieves and vultures. He yelled that it was his food and that they had no right to touch it. He then stormed into my bedroom, where I was trying to read, his face streaked with tears of fury. He told me what had happened and demanded that I punish the twins for stealing his pudding. This, I decided, was where I had to step in and finally lay down the law. I called all three boys into the living room. I asked the twins, in a calm, measured voice, if they had really eaten the entire bowl of pudding. They admitted it without hesitation. Their justification was exactly what I expected. It was rude of him to only make it for himself when we were sitting right there, Matt said, his arms crossed defensively. He knew we were hungry. He's just selfish. He could have just doubled the recipe. I turned to the twins first. I told them that eating his food without his permission, especially after he had explicitly said no, was not okay. It was disrespectful. But then I turned to Alex and I told him that his brothers had a valid point. When you live in a house with your family, I explained, and you are in a shared space, using shared ingredients to make food, it is deeply inconsiderate to act like you're cooking in your own private apartment. You don't get to hoard meals while everyone else just has to watch. Alex was livid. It's my hobby, he shot back, his voice rising. It's not my responsibility to feed two grown adults who are too lazy to learn how to boil pasta. I'm in school all day. It's not fair to expect me to come home and immediately start cooking for my brothers who had the entire day free to do it themselves. That was when I laid down the new rule, the ultimatum I thought would finally solve this endless cycle of conflict. If you are not going to cook for everyone, I said, my voice firm, then you cannot cook at all. Period. The reaction was even more explosive than I had anticipated. He slammed the refrigerator door so hard that a magnet fell off. He accused me of always taking their side just because they were older. He screamed that I was punishing him for having a hobby. He even spat out that maybe I should stop eating the fast food they buy, since apparently I didn't deserve it either. That was the last straw for me. I lost my temper, and I grounded him for his disrespect. For the past week, the atmosphere in our house has been thick with a tense, oppressive silence. Alex is completely withdrawn. He barely speaks to his brothers, and when he does, it's only to deliver snide, cutting remarks about food thieves or moochers. He has refused to cook at all, which, in my mind, only proves my point. If his passion for cooking is only enjoyable when no one else gets to benefit from it, then perhaps it was never about generosity or creativity in the first place. My husband is completely on my side. He agrees that this is about teaching a crucial life lesson. Being part of a family, he says, means contributing and sharing. If our son only ever learns to look out for himself, he will grow into a resentful, hoarding adult who is incapable of forming healthy, reciprocal relationships. We both grew up in households where meals were communal events, a time for sharing and connection, not just for the person who cooked them. We don't want to raise a son who believes that basic human consideration is an optional extra. I will also admit, my own patience with Alex's attitude has worn dangerously thin. This isn't the first time he's had a meltdown over food. He once made a stack of pancakes and told me that because I had been the one to flip them, they were technically mine and he shouldn't have to share them with anyone else. Another time, he baked a beautiful chocolate cake and left a passive-aggressive sticky note on the container that read, "Do not touch." When I asked him why, he said he didn't want the twins ruining it. He guards the refrigerator like it's his personal fortress, and it creates conflict every single time. The twins, I know, are not perfect. They can be pushy and entitled, and I was genuinely angry with them for eating the pudding without asking. But I understand their frustration. It must be exhausting to deal with their brother's constant food policing. They see him creating these incredible meals that fill the house with mouth-watering aromas, only to watch him plate up one enormous serving for himself, walk away, and leave a sink full of dirty dishes in his wake. They are older, they are working, and they share what they can. So, yes, I understand why they are finally fed up. To me, this issue is so much bigger than a bowl of banana pudding. It's about fairness, respect, and the fundamental nature of what it means to be a family. The groceries are paid for by my husband and me. The kitchen is a resource for the entire family. When one person repeatedly treats those shared resources as their own personal property, it breeds a deep and corrosive resentment. I simply do not want to raise a man who thinks the bare minimum of familial consideration is optional. Of course, my son sees it entirely differently. In his eyes, he's being punished for refusing to be a slave to his brothers. He says if they truly wanted food, they could cook it themselves instead of being dependent on him. He's even threatened to stop eating the takeout they bring home, just to prove a point. But in my eyes, that doesn't make him principled. It just makes him look ungrateful. They buy food because they want to share, not because they are under any obligation to do so. He cooks and makes it explicitly clear that he doesn't want to share. There's a fundamental difference in their mindsets. For now, he's been sulking for days. He won't join us for dinner. He eats cereal alone in his room and refuses to have a civil conversation with any of us. I don't regret the rule I laid down, but I absolutely hate the tension it has created. At the same time, I don't feel like I should cave just because he's throwing a prolonged tantrum. He needs to learn that when you live in a family, selfishness, in any form, has consequences. All right, Reddit, you have spoken. The verdict is in, and it is overwhelmingly, deafeningly clear. I am the asshole. I've read through hundreds of comments, and I can admit that I was wrong. But before I get into the changes I've made, I want to be very clear about something. I don't believe this situation was nearly as black and white as so many of you made it out to be. Some of the comments were brutal, acting as if I was deliberately enslaving my son or maliciously trying to crush his dreams. That's simply not fair, and it's not an accurate reflection of my intentions. Still, since the consensus is that I was in the wrong, I am willing to take it on the chin. I have officially lifted the rule. My son, Alex, can now cook whatever he wants, for whomever he wants, whenever he wants. He has his freedom in the kitchen back. I told him this directly, hoping for some sign of relief or gratitude. But whether or not he's actually happy about it remains to be seen. Honestly, he's still sulking. The tense atmosphere in the house hasn't dissipated. He's barely speaking to his brothers, and when he does, it's with short, sharp little digs like, "Don't steal my food again." I feel like I need to clear up some of the misconceptions that were rampant in the comments. My twins, Matt and Chris, are not the lazy, entitled monsters they were made out to be. They are not bullies. They are, in fact, very sweet, considerate young men. They constantly, and I mean constantly, compliment Alex on his cooking. They thank him effusively every single time he deigns to share a small portion with them. They have told both me and my husband on numerous occasions how genuinely impressed they are with his skills. They're not trying to stomp all over his passion. They are simply frustrated when they're sitting around, hungry and unsure of what to eat, and they have to watch their little brother whip up something that smells like heaven, only to be told they can't have any. To me, that seems like a very normal, understandable sibling dynamic. Annoying each other? Yes. Malicious? Absolutely not. And before anyone else comes at me saying that I just let them get away with eating his pudding, no, I did not. I scolded them for it. I told them in no uncertain terms that it was not okay, and they did face consequences for their actions. They were made to apologize to him directly. So no, they did not get away with it scot-free. I feel like a lot of commenters chose to conveniently ignore that part of my original post. I also want to stand by something that my husband and I still believe in, even if it's an unpopular opinion on the internet. We still believe there is a fundamental fairness in expecting family members who live under the same roof to share food. That belief hasn't magically disappeared just because 1,000 strangers on the internet piled on me. I was raised in a family where you simply don't hoard meals. If you're in the kitchen cooking, you make enough for everyone who is home. That's just how it was. My husband was raised the same way. Maybe that's old-fashioned, but that is the perspective we were coming from. It was never about turning Alex into our family's personal chef. It was about trying to instill in him the value that family life is not and should not be an every man for himself situation. But apparently, Reddit sees things very differently. So I have made the adjustment. He is now allowed to cook solely for himself and not share. I personally don't think it sets a great precedent for a young man who will soon be out in the world, but fine. I will also defend myself on another point that people kept hammering me on, the idea that the twins bringing home fast food is not equivalent to Alex cooking a meal from scratch. I understand that.
I truly do.
Cooking a meal takes time, effort, planning, and cleanup. But I also don't think it's fair to completely dismiss the fact that my twins use their own paychecks, money they work hard for, to feed our family. That matters. It's a gesture of generosity. And no, they don't just do it when it's convenient for them. There have been plenty of nights when I've come home, exhausted from work, to find that one of them has already brought home dinner for everyone. Alex has never once turned down that food. He doesn't say, "Oh no, thank you, that cheap pizza is not equivalent to the effort I put into my cocoa vin." He eats it, and he eats it happily. So, I do not think it is hypocritical of me to point out that courtesy is supposed to be a two-way street. Do I regret how I handled the banana pudding incident? Yes, of course I do, primarily because it's so clearly and spectacularly backfired. Do I regret the principle behind what I was trying to teach? Not really. I still believe there is something inherently selfish about constantly using a shared kitchen and shared groceries to cook elaborate meals for one, and never even offering to share. But I am letting it go because the overwhelming majority seems to disagree with me. I also want to address the accusations that I favor my twins. That one really stung because it is simply not true. I love all three of my boys with every fiber of my being. They all have their moments where they drive me absolutely crazy, and I have had to step in and mediate conflicts with all three of them at different times. This wasn't about favoritism. It was about me as a mother trying to balance three very different personalities. My twins are older, yes, but that doesn't mean I automatically side with them. It means that sometimes I expect a bit more maturity from my 16-year-old as well because he is much closer to being an adult now than he is to being a child. I don't want him to enter the adult world thinking that he never has to compromise or consider the feelings of others. The reality is, my sons actually do get along most of the time. They tease each other, they argue about stupid things, but they also laugh together, play video games for hours, and genuinely look out for each other. I didn't want this prolonged fight over food to be painted as some grand narrative where my twins are the villains and my youngest is the perpetual victim. That's not the reality of our family. It was a case of typical sibling bickering that got blown way out of proportion because it hit a very sore spot for everyone involved. So, this is where we are now. Alex has been ungrounded, and the kitchen rule has been lifted. I have told my son that he is free to cook however he likes. I have also told the twins, again, that they were wrong for eating his pudding and that they need to respect his food and his space. They have all been spoken to. They have all faced consequences in one form or another, and we are trying to move forward. My son is still moody and withdrawn, but I'm hoping that with a little time he will snap out of it. I've done my part, whether he chooses to appreciate it or not. If nothing else, this entire ordeal has taught me just how strongly people feel about food boundaries. And fine, I will concede that I underestimated just how much his passion for cooking truly means to my son. But I still hate that I was put in this position in the first place, because no matter what I do, it feels like someone in my house ends up unhappy. Anyway, there's your update. I did what you all wanted. He has his hobby back. The twins know they were wrong, too. I still think that many of you were far too harsh on me and far too forgiving of my son's selfish streak, but whatever. I'm the asshole. Lesson learned.